Hey, what's up, everyone? Good morning. Good morning. Hope you guys are doing well. Today is November the 17th. Brand new week here in the overall markets. We're basically opening up flat to start off the week. Main things coming to this week, we do have FOMC minutes and NVIDIA earnings. So we have NVIDIA earnings on Wednesday after close. We'll kind of talk about that here. That's really the main news driver for this overall week. I'll kind of talk about that here in a second. And then we'll head on to some charts, of course. Good morning. What's up, everyone? Good morning. What's up, Jing, Andreas, Victor, Jeff, Willie, B Roots, Limit, Under, KO, Juan. What's up, everyone? 50, Hector, Caroline. What's up, I am, Cinna, Cuba, Deuce. Yeah, what's up, everyone? Hope you guys are doing well. Let's hop into the key economic events. Hope you guys had a great weekend as well. Let me get some water here and we'll get started. Yeah, what's up, everyone? Hope you guys are doing well and had a great weekend. Let's go right on to the key economic events. So really coming into this week with the government coming to an end of the government shutdown, we're now going to start getting some more red folder news events in the market. Really for the red folder news events, at least coming to this week specifically, with FOMC minutes, that is going to be on Wednesday at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So you can see FOMC minutes, and then Thursday at 8:30, we have our unemployment rate, non-farm enrollment. You have some more red folder news events here as well, potential unemployment claims, and then on Friday, we have our flash services along with our flash manufacturing PMI, plus revised consumer sentiment, which is going to be at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. So that's what we have for the key economic events, at least coming into this week. As for the earnings calendar, so we still have a few earnings left in the overall markets, but the main thing here, of course, is going to be NVIDIA. The rest of the earnings really don't matter unless you're invested into them long term, where you can pay attention to them. But the main thing here is we do have NVIDIA, which is essentially what what's most likely the market's going to be waiting for is the NVIDIA earnings, which is Wednesday after close. Of course, we have a bit of smaller ones here as well. Target, we have Walmart, right, Home Depot. We have a couple other ones before Wednesday and after Wednesday, but the main thing here is going to be that NVIDIA earnings. So this is going to be huge coming to this week, so we'll definitely keep an eye out on that on Wednesday and before that as well. Now let's head on to some of the charts that we have coming into this week. We'll head on to the indices. Of course, we'll head on to the tech names here as well. Alrighty. So this is the ES chart here on the daily time frame. Right now, you can see that ES is bouncing off the key level of support. What I like to see moving forward is the reaction that we have off the 6680. That will be the main level moving forward. So as you can see here on the daily time frame, so last week we ended up having this really nice push towards the downside, and you can see buyers basically stepped in off our basically low that we created 2 weeks ago, and we pushed back towards the upside here on a Friday. So nice kind of bounce here for a Friday. Now moving forward here for the ES, the levels that I personally have marked out is going to be your Thursday's lows of last week. And other key levels I'm going to have marked out now is going to be your Friday's highs. So these are going to be the main two levels, at least coming into today specifically. If we can see a bounce here, potentially we can see a push back up and towards your Friday's highs and above, right? Potential kind of inverse head and shoulders could be in play as long as you maintain above your Thursday's lows of last week, which in this case is your 6750. If we ultimately break back underneath this level, I think we can see a bigger push really back down in towards your last week's lows. So keep an eye on this level coming into this week. It's going to be your Thursday's lows of last week. You can already see we had a touch here, end up using this as a retest. On Friday, we end up reclaiming this level. So this is the exact level price has to hold if we want to see any sort of push right back towards the upside. So that's going to be a key level coming into today here, specifically for the ES, right? On every single time frame, you can see this fairly clearly. As for the SPY, almost the exact same thesis, right? Key level is going to be your Friday's highs of last week, 676, and then we also have your 671. So coming into today, right, these are the two levels. You can see Friday, nice push higher, reclaim back above, and now we're just consolidating in this general area. If you want to see a push higher, preferably above your previous day highs for continuation, above your Friday's highs of last week. Of course, another possible scenario is going to be, right, the reclaim or hold above your Thursday's lows, which is your 671. If the overall market, as I mentioned, shows some weakness, which now will be really underneath your previous day lows, but the best short, in my opinion, is going to be the hold underneath now your previous kind of key pivot level, which is from yesterday, and also your Thursday's lows of last week. If we can get underneath this key area and hold underneath, then potentially, as I mentioned, we can see some continuation lower down in towards our last week's lows, which is going to be that 663. So these are the key levels I have specifically for the ES and the SPY coming to market open. Mark out your previous day highs and also mark out your Thursday's lows of last week. Let's go on to the NQ and the Qs now. All right. For the NQ chart, fairly similar thesis here. Right now, you can see that the NQ is at a key level of support, being the 24,600. Hopefully you guys can see this as well. It is, I can barely see it, but we'll head on to the chart here. You can see that the buyer stepped in nicely off the double bottom. What I like to see is a reclaim above your 25,300 if you want to see a move back towards the upside. So for the NQ, as you can see here, coming into this week, you end up having this nice kind of bounce off your week that we created, the low that we created from 2 weeks ago. Similar thing to the NQ here. Technically, my higher time frame level based off the daily chart is going to be this key pivot high. So as you can see here, this ended up using this as resistance, push towards the upside, try using this as support. Finally, now breaking underneath this key level. If we fail to reclaim back above, we're going to see continuation back towards the downside, essentially confirm this potential higher time frame head and shoulders. If we can reclaim back above this level, then we would invalidate this head and shoulders, and we can see this nice pushback towards the upside. So this is a very key level, which is basically the high that we created back from October the 10th. This is when we had that tariff news, which was, back from October the 10th. So that's a key level here on the higher time frames, at least for the levels that we have coming into today. Exact same thing we're going to have marked out along with the ES and SPY, which is your Friday's highs and your Thursday's lows. So if you go into the lower time frames coming into today, right, nice kind of push higher on Friday, hold of your Thursday's lows and push back towards the upside. Currently in the after hours and along with the pre-market, we end up having this nice push higher, ultimately kind of rejecting off this key pivot high, and now we're pushing back towards the downside. So coming into this morning here for the NQ, exact same thesis. What we're going to have marked out is your Friday's highs, 25,280 here, and then we're also going to have our Thursday's lows, which is essentially our 25,000. If you want to see some upside, right, either the bounce off of your Thursday's lows and this key pivot level from Friday for a pushback towards the upside, or now it's going to be above your Friday's highs, which in this case is your previous day highs. I'd much rather be waiting for now, most likely the break above your previous day highs, for me to be more inclined to taking long positions towards the upside. Currently with the overall markets, we still technically are staying heavy just based off of the hourly chart. You can see once we broke down really this triple bottom, which is a key level support, right? You can see the price action's been showing a little bit more weakness, with the exception on Friday where we had a nice bounce, but currently we are making lower highs and you have to be careful of that, especially going long. So coming to market open, as I mentioned, keep an eye out on your Thursday's lows along with their Friday's highs. If we can consolidate, potentially break underneath your Thursday's lows of last week, then we could be looking for some more downside underneath this key level, which is set, which as I mentioned is your 25,000. For the QQQ, exact same thesis. Key levels is going to be your Friday's highs, 613, along with your Thursday's lows, 607. So what we'd like to see is one of two scenarios, either the pop and fade off your previous day highs, or now underneath your Thursday's lows of last week and a hold underneath for this continuation lower. So 607, keep an eye on this, along with that 613. If you want to see some upside, as I mentioned, I'd much rather have it above your previous day highs, 613. Of course, you could be looking for this bounce play, which would be off your 607. Okay, so those are for the major indices coming to market open. The rest of the indices look fairly similar here as well. You can see the semis have been a little bit weaker the past couple of weeks, ever since we had FOMC a couple of weeks ago, where you can see a lot of the market now pulling back, specifically the semis, along with IWM and a bunch of these other really indices here as well. So that's something to keep in mind. We'll head on to the tech names here. So if you guys do have any charts or any tickers, you guys can now drop them in the chat. Yeah, if you guys do have any charts or any tickers you guys would like me to go over, you guys can now drop them in the chat. I'll go over some of these Meg 7 names, and then we will head on to some other tickers here as well. What's up, everyone? Good morning. Yeah, what's up, everyone? Good morning. Hope you guys are doing well. If you guys have any charts or any tickers, you guys can drop them in the chat. If you guys are enjoying this so far, of course, I appreciate it if you guys drop a like. If you guys haven't joined the free watch list, that of course is in the description below here as well. All right, let's go into the Meg 7, and then we'll head on to some other tickers here. First things first, right now you can see we'll go on to Tesla. Right now you can see that Tesla is breaking outside of this consolidation period that we have. What I like to see on this name is the reclaim back above the 420 or the retest of the 360 level here on the higher time frames. So for Tesla here on the higher time frames, there's really only two scenarios, right? Just strictly based off the daily chart. Either we get that original push up and towards our all-time highs, or if we break the low of the consolidation, now we can see a potential pushback towards the downside. So for Tesla, this ended up being one of the main names we actually shorted last week towards the downside, just because it was showing relative weakness. And once it got underneath this key level, we end up having a really nice push towards the downside. So really now coming into this week specifically for Tesla and moving forward, we have a couple key levels we're going to keep an eye out on. Number one, this previous level of support, which you can see multiple touches, bounce, 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 so many times here, really off this 410. So for Tesla, this is basically the low of the range that we've created. Now you can see nice flush, bounced nicely on Friday, but the key level is going to be this 410. If we reject here off this 410, we're going to see some more downside here in the overall markets and a potential push back down in towards that 360. If we can, reclaim back above this 410, then potentially you can see a reversal in here in the overall markets. So if we go into lower time frames here, turn back on our drawings, key levels that we have marked out, as I mentioned, is just going to be our Friday's highs of last week, which basically lines up with this key level, multiple touches here. And then we also have your Thursday's lows. So almost every single ticker is fairly similar. We're just going to have marked out your previous day highs. And we're going to also have marked out your Thursday's lows of last week. So as you can see, touch here. You have a touch here at your previous day highs as well. If you want to see some more downside, right, there's really two scenarios here. Either you're going to be looking for the fade kind of off your previous day highs, as long as you can maintain above this 415, we can see some continuation, or now you'd be waiting for really it to stay heavy, break underneath your Thursday's lows of last week, for this continued push really back down in towards that 382. So this is what we have here on Tesla specifically. Basically the same as the rest of the indices here as well. It's going to be that Thursday's lows of last week. If you want to see upside, in my opinion, it's going to have to be above your previous day highs, right? Key levels that we have marked out is your 412. We're going to have to see that reclaim if you want to see any sort of pushback towards the upside. Sorry if it's a little bit loud as well. The water truck's over, so bear with that. But as for Tesla, those are the levels that we have marked out. Now let's go on to NVIDIA. NVIDIA higher time frame thesis. Right now you can see that NVIDIA is still intact here on the higher time frames. Buyers are stepping in off the key level being of support, being the 180 here on the higher time frames. What I like to see coming to next week is the reaction that we have off this level. We do have to keep in mind that NVIDIA earnings are this week, which is going to be Wednesday after close. So really for me, at least coming to this week, I'm going to be a little bit more hands off on NVIDIA, at least Monday and Tuesday. And also Wednesday, just because there is earnings. It's going to be Wednesday after close. So you just want to be a little bit more patient. I don't expect too much to happen here on NVIDIA until we have earnings after close. So very rarely do you want to take trades before earnings just because the IV is going to be elevated. But just to keep in mind on the levels here for NVIDIA moving forward, what we're going to have here is your previous day highs, which is your 191. You can see we have multiple touches. This is basically the area that we broke down from. So we have your previous level of support turn into resistance. And now you can see a nice little rejection here in the pre-market, and we're pushing back towards the downside. So moving forward, if you want to see continued weakness, stay heavy underneath their previous day highs. If you want to see longs, reclaim back above this 191. Other levels that we have marked out here is our Thursday's lows of last week. Potential bounce off for Thursday's lows. As for shorts, I don't really like shorts either. Since there's earnings, nice bounce on Friday. For shorts, it would have to be really underneath your Thursday's lows, which is fairly far away. So either Thursday's lows or the previous day high short, but I'll just be cautious. It's basically opening up inside the middle of the range. So you're going to be more hands off NVIDIA, specifically the first 3 days of this week, just because we do have earnings, as I mentioned, on Wednesday. All right, let's go on to Apple. Right now, you can see that Apple is holding up while the market dropped last week. Overall consolidation at the highs on this one. What I like to see coming to next week is the reaction that we have off the all-time highs level or a pullback in towards the earnings low. So as you can see here for Apple, really we just kind of consolidation. Overall market pushed lower a few weeks ago. Apple basically kind of just is stuck inside this range. Market kind of had this nice bounce on Friday. Apple did not do too much. So really moving forward here on Apple, only key levels that matter is just going to be this range that we have marked out, 267 along with this 276 until we can break above this high. I would not be interested in longs, right? Until we can really break below these lows. Not really interested in shorts either. So just be a little bit more hands off on Apple until we finally pick a clear direction here in the overall markets. For Apple, potentially 270, underneath 270s in play. But really for the higher time frames wise, we're a potential 270 short, or now it's really going to be the short underneath your 267, which is a higher time frame key level. So for Apple, those are the levels that we have coming into today. As for potential bounce play, could bounce off your Friday's lows or even higher time frame level support, which is your 276. Either way, Apple is stuck in a range. We're not going to take a look at this one. Alrighty, let's go on to AMD. Right now, you can see that AMD is holding up compared to the overall markets. This one's been one of the strongest names. What I like to see moving forward on this one is the reaction that we have off the 239. So as you can see here, really for AMD compared to the overall markets, right, gap up, and we had some nice continuation towards the upside. And overall, we're holding up, right? Higher lows are being built. We're holding up here. AMD's been super solid, especially after this news event that it's just been holding up. We have a lot of bullish news catalysts with earnings, with OpenAI, with other kind of news catalysts that are projected here in the future with the investment. I think it was over $1 trillion into the future. So AMD's been holding up compared to the overall markets. Key levels that we're going to have marked out coming into today or coming into this week. Let's go into the hourly chart. So really last week here for AMD, really nice pop. We had that nice push basically towards that all-time highs key level. Ultimately, a bit of rejection, and then we came right back towards the downside. So for AMD moving forward, key levels that we're going to have marked out is basically this news candle high, which as you can see, we have multiple touches from Friday, from Thursday of last week, even all the way to the news that we had, which was from Tuesday of last week, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, Tuesday of last week. So for AMD moving forward, you want to just draw at this level right here, 248. If you want to see upside, break above, hold above your 248, continuation higher. If we want to see downside, rejection off this level, and a push back down in towards your last week's lows, which is going to be your 236. So level is fairly clear coming into today, 248 here, news candle high, multiple touches from its previous day here as well. So this is the level we're going to have marked out on AMD. Now let's go on to the next chart. All right. Next chart here is Meta. Right now you can see that Meta pushed all the way back towards the downside. This one has relative weakness compared to the overall markets after earnings. What I like to see on this one is to start forming a base here off your 600 key level. This one also filled the gap as well. So for Meta, let's hop onto the daily chart as you can see here. So this one's been beaten down. As you can see here, based off the higher time frames for Meta, nice push towards the downside. We had bearish earnings, overall markets moving lower, some negative news catalysts, overall markets dropping. Meta has really been leading the markets towards the downside. And we also have this daily gap. So you can see this daily gap really filled. Now we're having a little bit of buyers stepping in off this 600 key level. So far, no buyers. We have a very minimal amount of buyers have stepped in. But basically every pop has just been shorted towards the downside ever since earnings, right? Pop, faded towards the downside, pop and fade, right? Another pop, faded. Now for Meta, key level is going to be your 600 moving forward. So this is your daily gap fill, also a key level from last week here as well. Really, I'd personally like to see some buyers start stepping in on Meta and potentially to push this higher. But overall, every single pop has been shorted. So trying to find a bottom on this one is fairly difficult. Key levels I'm personally going to have marked out 616 along with our 604. So if you want to see any sort of reversal above your 616 or even above your 628 for a push higher, if not, right, rejection off your 616, we're just going to continue lower, right, lower highs, or now you're going to be waiting for the short underneath your 604, which is going to be this higher time frame key level support here as well. So this is what we have here on Meta. Not really too much to talk about, right? Kind of just been beaten down. So shorts, it's going to be a little bit harder to short just based off of the big move it's already had towards the downside. And of course, you don't really want to long this one just because the risk to reward's there for potential long-term play, but at least short-term for momentum, I'll be a little bit more cautious. All right, let's go on to Amazon. Right now, you can see that Amazon is moving towards the downside after failing to hold the 240 here on the higher time frames. This one moved back towards the gap fill fairly quickly. Now this one is at the exact level I'd like to see the buyer step in and push this back towards the upside. So as you can see here for Amazon, key levels that we have marked out is going to be this 240, which as you can see, we end up holding last week, but ultimately now broke back underneath, plus this full daily gap fill. So what we wanted to see really here for Amazon is a hold of your 240, or it's coming back down in towards this previous key pivot point, which now you can see on the hourly chart, just a break and retest level. So for Amazon, really moving forward, if you can see the buyers stepping in, potential reversal here is in play for a pushback towards the upside, or now you'd be waiting for the 242 break for a push higher. So these are the two long scenarios here on Amazon, right? Either offer 232 or now the reclaim back above your 242. As for shorts, I think shorts is going to be a little bit more difficult. Other levels you can actually have marked out. Let me just mark this real quick as well. Is going to be this 238. You can see touch here, potential pop and fade off your previous day highs for a pushback down in towards your 232 for a short position, but I'm not as interested in shorting Amazon just because it's at a key level support. Okay, we'll talk about kind of the top watches here in a second, but if you guys do have any tickers, it's also 8:30 here, so if you guys do have any tickers or any charts, you guys can now drop in the chat. I'll go over that. All right. What's up, everyone? Hope you guys are doing well. If you guys are enjoying this so far, of course, I appreciate if you guys drop a like. If you guys haven't joined the daily watch list, that one is in the description below, of course. Okay, let me grab some more water here. Actually ran out. But let's go on to Palantir. Okay, we'll go into Palantir and then we'll go into a couple of these other names here in a second. For Palantir, chart's a little bit messy here. Should have kind of cleared it up. But for Palantir, key levels that we have marked out is just going to be our last week's key pivot levels, which essentially is the same thing, right? We have, let's just mark this over, which is your previous day highs. And then we also basically have your Thursday's lows. So right now, basically for the overall markets, every single key level that we should have marked out is our Friday's highs, which in this case, we can just mark out here. And then we can also mark out our Thursday's lows. Or in this case, I just kind of have this key pivot level marked out, which was from Friday, November the 7th. But Friday's highs, and then we have your Thursday's lows, which you can see is fairly close. So coming into this week, specifically for Palantir, this one is still maintaining a little bit of weakness, as you can see here. Right, if you kind of just draw this out level, draw this level out here on the higher time frames, ever since we had earnings plus some negative news catalysts, right, we've been seeing a little bit more bearish price action here, specifically for Palantir. So coming into today, very key inflection point, right? Nice buyers stepping in here on Friday. If we can reverse, we're going to reverse kind of off this 171 for a push higher. But it does look like for Palantir, if we break underneath your 171, you can just see some more downside, right? Straight back down in towards our last week's lows here and below. So keep an eye out on essentially this general area, right? We can even refine this here if we'd like to that 171. So basically your Thursday's lows, as you can see, which is your 170. So downside, if we can get underneath, we can see some more potential push lower down and towards that 165. If we hold this, then we're just going to come right back up and towards our previous day close. Okay, that's what we have for Palantir. Let's go into a few other ones here as well. Oracle. So for Oracle, we actually end up having a really solid push towards the downside. So nice pop here with earnings, and we actually ended up gravitating all the way back down in towards that earnings low. So last week, the key level that we have marked out was at 225 earnings low, and we end up having a nice push lower. So for Oracle moving forward, this is going to be the exact key level. You can see touch here from last week, another touch once we got underneath that earnings low, and then we have multiple touches here in the pre-market as well. So For Oracle, moving forward, if we maintain underneath this 225 earnings low, we're going to see some more continuation lower. If you want to see any sort of reversal here, right, break above your previous day highs, break above your Thursday's highs of last week, and a very key level here. So 226 for Oracle moving forward. Let's go on to a couple more names here. So I'm going to go into a couple more names, and then I'm just going to get ready, and then I'm going to go over my top watches, and I'm going to get ready for market open. Thoughts on Netflix after split share. Usually there is a run up in towards your split. Oops. Let's see, adjust strongs. So for Netflix, usually there's a pre-split run up, but ultimately now after the split, I wouldn't be surprised if you have a little bit of a pullback here. So for Netflix, key levels now that we're just going to have marked out really is this 111. So 111 showing a little bit more weakness. Potentially we can see now a push really all the way back down in towards that 109 here. As for SoFi, yeah, SoFi rejected off the key level that I didn't really want it to, but all-time highs rejection, which we very much well said, if it rejects off this area, we're going to come right back down. Overall market dropped on this day here as well, which didn't help it, but pretty big drop on SoFi. If we're going to go back onto the weekly time frame, now it's just going to consolidate. So, right, as long as you can maintain above 26, we're just going to consolidate in this general area. If you want to see a push higher, right, really above 30 for continuation. If we're going to see a reversal, it's going to kind of reject and come right back towards the downside. So moving forward, now we're just waiting for essentially this consolidation, and we're going to be waiting for the break above or right a pullback underneath that 26. We'll see if we can get that break above. Hopefully we do. We'll have to wait for the market to flip and everything else if this is going to move higher. All right, let me go on to my main watches coming into today, and then I'm going to get ready for market open. So with the overall markets, let me actually just finish this. Yeah, my bad. So let me just kind of do that once more. So my game plan coming into today. So key levels that we have marked out is going to be your Friday's highs along with their Thursday's lows of last week. So I'm going to be waiting for that first 15 to 30 minutes of market open. If we can break underneath, so coming to today, if we break underneath within the first 15 to 30 minutes and hold underneath and show a lot of bearish price action, then I'm going to be more inclined to looking for continuation down in towards that previous day, really that Friday's lows of last week. So keep an eye out on your 670 here for the SPY coming into market open. If the buyers step in right off the bat, right, if we kind of wick underneath and the buyers step in right off the bat within the first kind of 15 to 30 minutes, then not as interested in the short side, and I'm going to be a little bit more patient. So we'll wait for that first 15 to 30 minutes to play out on both the SPY and the QQQ. Q's in this case key level 607, and then we also have your 613. With that being said, coming into today, one of my main watches is going to be Tesla. So if the market does want to drop, pay attention to Tesla just because this one higher time frame is breaking outside of this consolidation. You can see 410, multiple touches. If you want to reject here, and if the market wants to show weakness, Tesla does have a decent amount of room down in towards your previous day lows and potentially below. So Tesla's going to be one of my main watches coming to today for some more downside. if the market does want to show weakness. So key level, Thursday's lows of last week. And we're going to also have to mark out our previous day close. There's really two scenarios here. Potential pop, short down in towards your Thursday's lows and below, or now it's going to be underneath your Thursday's lows for continuation lower. I'd personally like to see it honestly fill the gap. So I'd much rather see the pop and fade on Tesla coming to market open to fill the gap and then head lower towards the downside. So for Tesla, I wouldn't be opposed pop up and towards your 404 and now push down in towards your Thursday's lows and below. So we'll keep an eye on Tesla. One of my main watches towards the downside, we can just color code this if the market does want to stay weak. As for Nvidia, hands off on this one just because it does have earnings. I don't really want to touch this one until after earnings. As for AMD, key levels that we can keep an eye out on is going to be this 248. I'm not opposed to shorting AMD, but of course higher time frame in my opinion is still bullish, so not as interested in looking for shorts. But if we reject offer 248, potential pop and fade down in towards that 236 for AMD. My reclaim level, as I mentioned, 248 for a potential push higher. So neutral on AMD. As for Nvidia, not going to trade this one. As for Apple, potentially this one showing a little bit of weakness here in the pre-market. I don't really like trading Apple specifically if it's inside of a range, so I would just be more hands off, right? Apple, a lot of the times it'll look really solid and then you end up entering in the trade and then it absolutely does nothing. So for Apple, potential previous day low shorts, but as I mentioned, be a little bit more cautious on this one. As for Amazon, higher time frames, key levels that we have marked out, previous day highs. If you want to see some continuation lower, previous day highs short towards the downside. And that's going to be the key level for Amazon moving forward, potentially down towards that previous day lows. If you want to see a reclaim, potentially above that 238 is going to be key. As for Google, I actually forgot to talk about Google, but this one had some news here in the after hours. And I can see a nice pop here in the pre-market, just kind of right back up and towards our last week's highs. So for Google, my opinion, it's going to be a little bit of a trickier setup. But key level is your 285. I personally don't really like this long off this 285 with it kind of fading towards the downside. I'd be a little bit more cautious here on Google, but this is the key level 285 if you want to see a push higher. If you want to see a gap fill reversal, underneath your 285 for a push lower. And then for the rest of the tickers, really just sitting inside of this consolidation. So coming into market open, Meta still staying somewhat heavy. Coming into today here for the overall markets, if we do, it's really just dependent on the SPY and Qs. If the SPY pushes lower along with the Qs, the rest of the market's going to drop here as well. And then we can be looking at Tesla along with Palantir. If the markets do want to see some buyers stepping in within the first kind of 30 minutes, I think this long position is going to be a little bit more tricky just because, right, clear downtrend still. We had that nice bounce on Friday. I don't expect this to be another kind of V-shaped bounce for a push higher. So the longs really for me, I'm going to be a little bit more patient on the long side. And then for the short side, we're going to be a little bit more patient right off the bat. But if we get underneath that Thursday's lows, along with the SPY here as well, then we could be looking for continuation lower on the overall indices themselves. And we can keep an eye out on Tesla and Palantir as well, since these ones are showing relative weakness on the higher time frames and relative weakness intraday here as well. So that is going to be it for me today. Those are the key levels that we have marked out. As I mentioned, no red folder news the first 2 days. We do have FOMC minutes later into the week. And of course, we have NVIDIA earnings, which is going to be the main news driver, at least moving forward now. We'll take it day by day, just because either more news is going to come out, right? There's no clear thesis on the higher time frame. So we're just going to base it off of key levels. And yeah, that is going to be it for me today. I ran out of water here, so I'm going to call it as well. Also close to 8:40. Yeah, 8:42. But yeah, hopefully you guys did enjoy that. If you did, appreciate if you guys drop a like. And of course, if you guys haven't joined the free watch list, that one's in the description below. and I will see you guys all tomorrow morning. All right. Take care, everyone. Have a great rest of the day. Peace.